Hello, friends. Welcome back to yet another chapter in the Vikas Life Skills series for the Prerana Prep program. My name is Arun and I welcome you to chapter 7. In this chapter, we will talk about interpersonal skills and why is it such an important ability to have and how it helps all of us. Interpersonal skills, as you know, is the ability required to interact between two people. So whenever two people are interacting, we need certain skills to make sure that that interaction becomes very useful and fruitful. So let's see how we can do that in this session. Now before we begin, what you see on your screen is a greeting card. Look at this greeting card and think about a good friend to whom you would like to give this card. As you think about the friend, fill out this card and imagine that you're sending this card to your friend. Pause this video here now. Think, write down what you want to say to this friend of yours, and once you're done, resume the video. Alright, so I hope you have written down some good things to this friend of yours. Now I want you to see how you feel about what you've written. What is the feeling you're getting? And be with that feeling as we continue in this program. So what we will cover today is what exactly do we mean by interpersonal skills and where is the need to develop such skills and what is the requirement of such skills in our life? What exactly do they mean and what are the components of interpersonal skills? What techniques do we need to use to be able to develop these skills? And what are the benefits of actually having interpersonal skills? So let's look at them one by one as we go along. So firstly, what are interpersonal skills? So we in this world do not operate individually. When we operate in a society, we interact with people, we interact with individuals, we interact with groups of people. We are always on an interaction mode. So we rarely operate on an individual basis. So in such a situation, it is important for us to have skills which helps us with these interactions in an effective way. Of course, without good skills, you can still interact, but those interactions will not be as effective as you would want them to be. And effective interactions are important so that we can get our work done in this society. So what exactly are interpersonal skills? Interpersonal skills are nothing but the abilities that you need to make these interactions possible. Some of these abilities we already have. Some of these abilities we need to build. Some abilities we have, but we do not have the awareness of these abilities. So it's a good idea to understand what these abilities are and keep them in your conscious mind. So if you look at your screen, some of the abilities listed here are active listening. Active listening is part of good communication skills. Communication skills, as you know, is very important when we communicate between two people. So one of the components of communications is active listening. If you are unable to listen to somebody talking, it does not build an immediate connection. Imagine somebody is talking to you and you are only thinking about what your next response should be. It actually, the person can make out that you're not listening. And when you're doing this, the person is unable to establish that connection with you. So active listening is very important. You need to be able to listen and show that you're listening. That's more important, right? So when you develop active listening, you also develop an open-mindedness because now your mind is open to what the other person is saying. Your mind is open to his or her ideas, and open mind is important to develop a good relationship. Because if you are closed mind and if you're thinking only about your own opinion, your own solutions, etc., you're not generating a goodwill that is required to build this interpersonal skills. So open-mindedness also means that you then understand the other person's viewpoint, which is important, because my way or highway is a very bad attitude to have when it comes to developing interpersonal skills. Having a objective viewpoint of the other person's opinion, making sure that you understand, or you're giving an attempt to understand the other person's viewpoint, becomes very important. And of course, honesty is very important. Communicating honestly without any hidden agenda, without any malified intention, you should be able to build these skills very easily. And managing your own emotions. So we will look at it a little bit later in the section on self-awareness. Ability to build trust. And that's a key important factor when it comes to building relationship. Trust is a very key factor, and trust is a two-way traffic. So trust is given and taken. Please be aware, it is not very easy to build trust. It takes years to build trust, and it takes moments to break it. So trust is a very important ingredient, and it is a very difficult ingredient to build. So interpersonal skills requires these kind of skills for you to make sure that your interactions are effective, fruitful, and what you want. And like they say, while you're operating in a society, there is no independence, there is only interdependence, which means you depend on somebody else depends on you, and this wheel of life has to go on with better skills, and that is interpersonal skills. Now look at this table here. On the left side columns, there are certain traits mentioned. For example, friendly, open-minded, tolerant, etc. And on the other side, you have columns to write down names of people who you know are having these skills. For example, pick a name and see which skill this person is best suited, or pick the skill and think about a person who is best suited for the skill. Write down those names here and how they are related to you. Pause this video right now. Take a piece of paper or pen and write down these names, and then let's come back. Okay, so I hope you have written down names of people against each of these components and how they are related to you. What you do with this list, look at the list and see what you can learn from some of these people. Obviously, these people are known to you. They are either your friends, relatives, or somebody close to you. Can you pick up some of the skills from these people and apply it into your own life? This way, you get a living example of some of the skills that are needed in interpersonal skills. And it is very easy to emulate somebody who has a skill when you know these people, when they are close to you, right? So that is the objective of this exercise. Think about it and use this table to apply some of those skills to your own life. Moving on, what are the components of interpersonal skills? Now, what do we need to develop interpersonal skills? So in the book, you have these four elements that are written: friendliness, communication, personal ethics, and self-awareness. Now, these are some of the key category of skills required. You need to be friendly, you need to have good communication skills, and your personal ethics or morals have to be good. And you need to be somebody who is self-aware. So if you are able to develop these skills, your ability to develop better interpersonal skills will improve multifold. So let's look at some of the elements that are in each of these components. When we look at friendliness, friendliness is nothing but how friendly you are. And what does friendly mean? Friendly means that you should be able to associate with that person. You should be able to have empathy. And empathy is nothing but stepping into that person's shoes and looking at the situation from that person's standpoint. So you are aware of what that person's feeling is when you are an empathetic person. Of course, it becomes easy if somebody tells us what their feelings are, right? So then we immediately know what their feeling is. But most of us do not discuss our feelings. Most of us do not tell our feelings to others. So in that scenario, it becomes difficult to understand the feelings of the others. So which makes it important to be empathetic, to be able to view the life of somebody from their own point of view, from their own eyes, and then empathize. And that is a very, very important ingredient when it comes to friendliness. A related skill is sensitivity and being sympathetic. So if you meet somebody and you know that the person is going through a rough patch, you can be sympathetic and can be sensitive to that person's feelings, person's situations. So simple words like I understand how you feel, or it's okay, you'll be fine, etc. makes a great deal of difference to that person, and that person actually considers you as somebody who's sympathetic, who is empathetic, who is friendly. So very simply put, friendliness is just these two things, and anything over and above that only improves the friendliness quotient, right? Just start by being empathetic to somebody, start by being sensitive to their situations, immediately your friendliness quotient goes up. Look at this little story that is there on your screen right now. Read through this, um, pause the video here and answer the question. Okay, so I hope you went through that little scenario, and what quality of the boy does this story reflect? And I'm sure your answer is empathy. Yes, that is because the boy associates his own condition with the condition of the puppy, and he wants the same treatment given to the puppy. So the puppy is a reflection of this own boy. So this is an empathetic situation. Next, we come to communication. Now we all know communication is just such a simple term. We use it every day in our day-to-day lives. Everybody, you must have heard people saying you need to have better communication, etc. But what is communication? Communication, if you have to very simply define, is what message you are trying to convey to the other person. So effective communication essentially means that the message that you are communicating is received in the manner that you wanted to communicate, not what the person interpreted it as. So if you are saying something and the other person has understood it differently, then the effect of communication is lost. So it is estimated that 75% of our time in a day is spent on communication. And when we say communication, it is not just about talking and listening. It's about non-verbal communication. It is about reading, writing, etc. So these communication skills are important to develop interpersonal relationship. So communication becomes a key, and like I said earlier, active listening is one part of communication. The other part of communication is what language you use, what body language you use. So like they say, you cannot not communicate. At any point of time, even though you are not communicating, you are actually saying something. So communication becomes very important. You have to be aware of what you are communicating, and what you are not communicating, right? The two ingredients that is listed in your book is etiquettes and reciprocation. So etiquette is an important aspect of communication because it then makes you a better communicator. Somebody associates better with you. For example, if you use words like please, thank you, etc., you come across like a humble person, not like an arrogant person. And the more humble you are, the more accepted you become. If you are arrogant, if you are rude, people tend to not accept you. People tend to keep you at an arm's length. So when you have better etiquettes, when you are better manners, when you use words that are indicating humility, you are able to strike that first conversation. And then from then on, you can start building. If you appear as somebody who's rude or arrogant, uh, the first opportunity of establishing a connection is lost. So etiquette becomes a very important door opener for you, right? And similarly, how you reciprocate, a famous quote by Sean Penn says that I like to believe that love is a reciprocal thing, that it can't be felt truly by one, which means even though you are in love with somebody, unless there is a reciprocation, that circle does not complete. So the love that you feel is not completed. So in a situation where we interact with people, we interact with individuals, groups of people, etc., reciprocation is very important. The back and forth, the two-way traffic that I spoke about earlier is very important. And how you reciprocate becomes very important. If somebody is trying to say something and if you are indifferent, if you do not reciprocate, then you are unable to make that connection. Communication is also about space. Now, as you must be knowing, we have zones around our body, around our physical body. We don't allow people to come whom we don't know to come very close. So the intimate zone, that is the zone that is within 1 meter of our body, is a zone where we allow only our loved ones to come. And this is a zone where somebody can come and touch you, hug you. So these are typically people whom you love, your parents, your spouse, your children, etc. The next zone is the personal zone, the zone that typically is 1 to 2 meters away from your body. And this is a zone where you have for your friends, your colleagues, relatives, etc. So here you could have a shake of a handshake at the best, because you're then reaching out into that zone. The zone after that is the social zone, where you have strangers whom you don't know. So they are typically in the 2 to 4 meters of your body. Anything beyond that is the public zone, the where you have large crowds, etc. So you stay away from these kind of groups so that it keeps you safe. So this is typically what a zone system around us is. So when you want to communicate with somebody, you need to be aware of these zones. Don't go too close to a stranger. If you go into the personal zone of the stranger will, if you notice, step back, which means that you are not invited in that zone. So be aware of these zones, because these zones then make the person you are interacting with comfortable. So if you go too close, the person becomes uncomfortable, the person becomes on a defense, and so then you fail to establish that connection. So it's important to understand what those zones are. Pause this video here for a moment and read this question, and then Write down the answer to this question in a piece of paper. What would you do in this situation? Okay, I hope you have your answer. Evaluate this answer for yourself. There is no right or wrong answer. Evaluate this answer for yourself and see what kind of behavior you have exhibited while answering this question. We jump to personal ethics, which is yet another component of interpersonal skills. Personal ethics is about doing what is right, being able to distinguish between the right and the wrong, typically in terms of morals, etc. So your book has two components of personal ethics. One is tolerance and one is positive attitude. Now, unless you have tolerance to somebody else's ideas, somebody else's solutions, somebody else's viewpoints, it is very difficult to create that connection in an interpersonal skill, in an interpersonal relationship, right? So tolerance is the ability to understand that person's point of view, to be able to have the diversity. Typically, like they say, live and let live, which means you live, you also let others live. So that is typically what tolerance means, which means you're tolerant, you're willing to accept the other people's viewpoint, opinions, solutions, etc. Right? So it's important to have this tolerance and not just say that it is either my way or the highway. So that is the point that tolerance is talks about. And the other one is positive attitude. Now, positive attitude is an important ability to have because that helps you look at the world also in a more positive manner. If your internal mechanism is driven by negativity, you tend to look at everybody else also with a suspicion, everybody else also with a negative lens. Now that creates a problem when you're trying to build a relationship. When you're trying to build relationship, like I said earlier, if you do not trust, if you do not have a positive outlook, then your relationship starts in a negative note, and that becomes a bad foundation. So having a own positive self is important to look at others in a positive manner. So positive attitude is nothing but a state of mind where you have positive resources, you have positive ideas, you look at everything positively. Right? Now, as a side note, is it possible to be positive all the time? No, it is not, because human brain that we are, negativity creeps in very frequently. So you cannot wish away that. But the point is, how often are you dwelling in negativity? How frequently are you staying there? Now, the more you stay in negativity, the more you become habituated for it. So whenever you have a negative thought, it is okay. Just move out of it as quickly as you can. That is the important ability that you should cultivate. So positive attitude means look at things in a positive way. Doesn't mean that you can be positive all the time, but you can move into that positive zone quickly whenever you are out of that zone. Now this is a story of Buddha, and this actually illustrates how you can remain positive. Now, this is a story when Buddha was teaching a group of people. A particular individual was angry for some reason and was abusing Buddha. So whatever Buddha used to say, this person used to have some side comment in an angry manner. So Buddha then asked the group of people, if somebody gives you a gift and you choose to decline it, then who owns the gift? If somebody gives another person a gift and the receiver chooses to decline it, so who is the owner of the gift? So after some time, some thought, the group said it is the giver. So if the receiver doesn't accept the gift remains with the giver. So Buddha said that is the point. So whenever somebody abuses you, if you do not accept it, the abuse remains with the giver, which means you are no longer the owner of the abuse because you have never accepted it. So similarly, when some negativity is thrown at you, if you do not accept it, you can stay positive, right? So be aware of what you accept, what you consume, and what you internalize. So the more and more negative thoughts you internalize, the more and more negative you become. So that is a brilliant message that this story conveys. We talk about being self-aware. Now, what is self-aware? Um, Self-awareness means, are you aware of your own state of mind and body? Are you aware of your emotions? Are your emotions driving you, or are you driving your emotions? So, for example, when you are angry, are you aware that you are angry? Or is it just that you're angry and whatever you're doing in an anger? There is a difference. So the minute you are aware that you're angry, you suddenly realize that whatever you're doing is probably not the right thing. So self-awareness is nothing but being aware of your state of mind, your state of body, and your behavior in reaction to these states. So it is very important to be self-aware. It is very important to be aware of your emotion at every single point of your day. You should be aware when you are angry, when you are sad, when you are happy. So you should be able to identify these emotions and take action based on that emotions. And if you need to correct, it will be easy to correct when you are self-aware. So at this point, stop this video here, pause it here, and answer these questions for yourself. There are a few questions here. Just make sure each and every question here you make a note in your book, and after that, let's proceed. Okay, so I hope you made answers to each of these questions. Now, if you closely evaluate these answers, you will realize that you are suddenly becoming aware of your behavior, of your state of mind, of your emotional state, the minute you start answering these questions. So self-awareness is nothing but being aware and doing all your actions, all your behavior in a conscious and calculated manner, not just being driven by some automatic way of leading life. Now this is another representation of communication. Now I want you to imagine you yourself as Bill. Now you want to say something to somebody, right? To John. Now you think of it in your mind first, and then you communicate it using language, using words, using actions, etc. Now sometimes what you think and what you communicate do not match. And this is a classic example of not being self-aware. Suppose I am angry and I want to say something, but when I actually say it, when I use the language, when I use actions, they depict probably more intensity than what I was thinking. That is because of the anger, the emotion of anger inside me, right? So since I am not self-aware, I am not able to control my language, my actions, which match my thought process. So self-awareness builds this connection between what I'm thinking and what I'm saying, right? Now imagine that you have to say something to John, so you first thought and then you communicated. Now John as an individual also has a lot of filters, a lot of belief systems, a lot of perceptions, a lot of assumptions. So probably in his previous interactions with you or somebody like you, he's had an experience. So those experiences will form filters and beliefs for John. So whatever you say, John will view it through that filtration system. And John will hear something. He will understand something else because of those filtration systems. And because he has understood those in those filtration systems, his reaction or his response to you will be according to those filtration systems or those belief systems. Now, if this reaction is not what something that you are expecting, you will react in another manner. So this cycle continues since both you and John are not self-aware people. Now, if you flip the coin and if you say, assume that you are self-aware and John is also self-aware, so what happens is the whole conversation changes. The whole conversation changes in a manner where you give out balanced communication. John also picks it up in the way you had intended to give, and John also communicates back to you in the way he intends to communicate. And similarly, you understand the way he intended to communicate, and this cycle brings about a very cordial relationship as against a very uninformed or unbalanced communication that is shown in this picture. So the personal filter is an important aspect which you need to keep in mind when you're working with others. This is a concept from a book, the Fifth Discipline Field book. It's called the ladder of influence. And what this essentially means is when we create our belief systems, the first commitments we make to our belief systems, we actually start building on them. So if the belief systems are negative, if the belief systems are wrong, we actually continue to build on those belief systems unless we are able to be aware of those belief systems and correct them. So if you look at the ladder from bottom to top, we have we observe data and experiences in our daily lives, right? There are a lot of inputs that we get through our visual, audio and kinesthetic modes. That is your sights, sounds, your feels, touch and feel, your smell, your taste, etc. So these are senses from which we get inputs from the environment around us. So there are a lot of data that we collect. Now we select the data that we want to select. So basically we select the data that we observe and then we make assumptions on those data based on our prior experiences, our prior filters, etc. Now when we make assumptions, we draw conclusions based on those assumptions. So we decide that the conclusion of that based on those assumptions. These conclusions then create belief systems, and then these belief systems make us act in a particular manner. So you see the kind of chain reaction that happens from a simple input to output process. So what we see, what we hear, what we feel, we create so many filters based on assumptions, based on beliefs, based on prior experiences, not our own experiences, not only our own experiences, but also others' experiences around us. Right? So we create this belief system and then we create filters and then we act based on the filters. So it is not necessary that what we hear and what we act are in line. So a self-aware person has all of these filters sorted out. So he or she knows that what exactly is coming in and how to evaluate that information and how to act accordingly. So this becomes a very important ingredient in creating a better interpersonal relationship. Look at this bird. Now imagine one wing is process, another wing is task. One wing is smaller and the other wing is bigger. So what happens to this bird? If the bird has one short wing and one normal wing, it cannot have a decent flight. It will actually fly in circles. That is what happens when you interact with people. See, when you interact with people, there are two kinds of people, and if you look at it, you look at yourself also in that way. One is a task-oriented person whose only job is to, whose only result is to get the job done. And the other is a process-oriented person. A process-oriented person is interested in the process of getting the job done also, which means how he or she interacts with people to get the work done, etc. So considering that one wing is a process-oriented person, another wing is a task-oriented person, the bird will not have a straight flight if both the wings are not okay, which means you have to be a balanced individual. While you are focused in getting the task done, you should also have a very strong focus on the process of the task also, which means how you care for people, how you get people along, how you make sure that people buy into your ideas. So task and process are important to be able to get a balanced relationship with somebody you are dealing with. So don't just focus on the result, focus also on how you get the result and how you can get people along. So when we talk about getting to know each other, what we say is, we say be a balanced individual and just don't get carried away by one thing or the other. So we spoke about building better interpersonal skills. Now, why is interpersonal skills needed? Like, uh, to be able to deal better with people around us. Like I said earlier, we do not live in a capsule. We do not live amongst ourselves. We live with people. We live in a society and we need to interact with people. We need to get our jobs done. We need to have better relationships in our society. So interpersonal skills is a good ability to have to be able to deal with people better. So I hope you are able to get some new ideas with this chapter. I hope you are able to implement this better. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this video and good luck to you.